Well, good morning and welcome to this week's live stream. It's been a couple of weeks since we were here, and but we've been busy in the field preparing a number of things that kind of led to today's live stream today. A lot of times when we live stream, we're bringing information directly from the field or something related to it back to this stream. So today we are going to speak about an EPA report from 2013 entitled Laboratory Evaluation of the Efficacy of Chlorine Dioxide Fumigation for Remediation of Building Materials Contaminated with Molds, Mycotoxins, and Allergens. We're going to come through that, and then we're going to talk about some results that we've seen from the field in a recent report that I prepared. And all of this will be available or is available in WorkDrive under the contractor support folder. So if you have questions about that, or if you need access to that, shoot me an email at support@enviroguarddirect.com. We'll make sure that we add you to that folder or those folders. There's a products folder, there's a support folder, there's a bunch of folders. So anyway, before we get started with that, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a couple other little items that we have prepared for support. The first is, if you are doing anything like testing, some pre-testing of your jobs for soot or nicotine, and you want to have labels that enable you to list out different percentages by percentage or by ounces, we've prepared these labels, and we're going to continue to grow this little service, but we've prepared these labels to go ahead and, for bottles, so that you can pre-test surfaces and know exactly what concentration and how much code orange, for example, you're going to need. Now, we're going to have these labels for a lot of different things, but in this case, this is really for soot and nicotine removal, and this would enable you to pre-test those surfaces and go in with your team eyes wide open as to exactly what your dilution is going to be. Excuse me. And what your costs are going to be. So there you go. Those labels are brand new. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that the tips within the pump sprayers, some of them have been discontinued, and we've known for a little while that it doesn't take too long, maybe a few months, where the tip will actually begin to bore out because they're poly tips. Well, we have sourced brand new tips. Let me just show this to you. This is a stainless steel insert, 316 stainless steel. And so these are going to become available next week, so that if you do need additional tips and you want something that's going to be more robust, then these will be provided. You can see the insert hopefully right there. Okay, so those will become available in the 8001, 8002, and 8004 sizes to match up with our BTM sprayer as well. We always talk about, the heavy duty pump sprayers being kind of the on ramp, and then shining light on how great the BTM system is in terms of efficiency, profitability when you're ready to go to an electric system. So we try to keep everything equivalent. So there you go. Those new tips will be available next week. Now, let's get into this lab report. And this has been something that I have been reading through in the evenings, something that I've been reading through in the mornings to make sure I understand it. And then I have prepared a form, and I'm just going to give you a shot of this. Oh, not that one. This one. And we're going to come back to this in just a little bit here. But I have prepared a form where, as a community, we're going to do some testing over the next few months together from real life jobs. Because after all, this one talks about laboratory evaluation. Well, none of us are that interested long term in laboratory evaluations. We're interested in what is going on a real job. Right? What kind of results can I expect on a real job? So let's take it from theoretical today and then let's test it ourselves as we've been doing, but we can do it at scale together as well. And we're ready to do that. So I'll bring that back front and center in just a little bit. Okay, so this lab report has to do with the fumigation of chlorine dioxide at different relative humidities, on different substrates, both in a vegetative and non-vegetative state. In other words, both condition 2 and condition 3. It brings together results, testing and results when it comes to different types of molds, several types of mycotoxins, and several types of allergens. Okay. And these are questions that come up all the time. So I think that this is relevant. And I think, as you'll see, it is especially relevant for condition 2 elevated spore environments. That's my takeaway from it. But we're going to go through the information and make sure that everybody is on the same page with this information. So let me get into it, because we could be here forever going through this. There are some abbreviations, and I'm just going to call out a few of them. First thing that you're going to see is that a number of different molds or fungi, a number of different allergens, and then a number of different mycotoxins have been abbreviated. So when we talk about Aspergillus fumigatus, you're going to see, and that's a mycotoxin, you're going to see it referred to as ASPF1, right? ClO2 is, of course, going to be denoted or chlorine dioxide is going to be denoted as ClO2. Colony-forming units, which comes up a lot, especially when we're talking about the first fungal reports, is going to be CFU for colony fungal units. Couple other things that you probably want to pay attention to. NG for nanograms. When we get over to the the allergen side, is it the allergen side or mycotoxin side? I think it's the allergen side, but we'll see. You'll see that referred to as NG in one of the columns. What else might help everybody? Let me just go down here. What? It's a little sensitive. Let me zoom out just a little bit on this. Okay, here we go. There was one other thing I was thinking of. Well, we'll get there, and then I'll make sure to call it out. Okay. So one of the first things I think that we want to jump into is, this is kind of a background. Yeah, this is a background. Maybe let's jump into some materials and methodologies first of all. Okay. So the overall approach that you can kind of take away from this is that the fumigation experiments to evaluate the efficacy of chlorine dioxide gas as a function of concentration, time, overall CT, and relative humidity. You're going to see things referred to as cultures within this. Cultures are typically when you take a sample, and I can't think of the media right now, but typically what you're doing is taking swab samples, you are culturing the media, and then you would expect growth. You're going to have both controls, which in this case, controls were on glass. Every other surface, whether we're talking about painted surfaces or raw wood surfaces, etc., those would not be, those would be your test subjects. But glass was used as the media for the control. So there is a mycotoxin analysis that is referred to as inactivation of that mycotoxin, and the toxin that we're looking at in this study is aflatoxin. And then the allergen analysis, as we'll see, referred to as R-alt-A1, is going to come up again and again when we get down to those results. I'm sorry that I'm kind of going through this. I didn't know exactly how I wanted to present the information, even though I've been reading it nonstop for the past week or so. One other thing, there are these things referred to as coupons. Now, the coupons are simply 1 inch by 1 inch test samples, like flat test samples, and they are prepared as vegetative, meaning that there is actual vegetative growth on those surfaces, or non-vegetative. That is referring to just the spores themselves. So keep in mind when we get to that, we're going to be looking at both non-vegetative and vegetative sampling, and we're going to be looking at those results together. The organisms that were tested, as we get down here, are going to be Aspergillus versicolor, Aspergillus fumigatus, Alternaria alternata, Stachybotrys catarum, and Cotonium globosum. I know that we normally just refer to them as like Aspergillus or Stachybotrys or Cotonium, but of course they have all of the full name in here. Let's see what else could be helpful. All right, let's talk about some fumigation procedures. You're going to see several different RHs, but the primary relative humidity used in this testing are two: 45% relative humidity and 75% relative humidity. Those numbers are going to be important when we start getting into the results portion of things. You're also going to note that a lot of this information and the initial part per million counts, ppm, that you'll see here, is a derivative of a starting point or an endpoint that was used in anthrax mitigation. So they used the part per million starting point from the results that were gained through actual efficacy reports having to do with anthrax. And you're going to notice that there are going to be different hours of exposure used. If I'm remembering correctly, 1 hour, 3 hour, 6 hour, and perhaps 9 and 12 hour. And there are some, I think, 24 hours, but few and far between, were used as the overall dwell times in this information. And you're going to see that 9,000 parts per million per hour is hour of exposure was used over and over again, but we're going to see that show up in different ways. And some of those are going to go as low as 750 parts per million per hour. And I think maybe the highest is maybe 3,000. So when we get there, I'll call that out and I'll explain it so that we're all on the same page. All right. So this is a system that was used to deliver the chlorine dioxide to the test subject. And as you'll see, the test subject is an 11 cubic foot container, basically, where from a control standpoint, the chlorine dioxide gas was pumped into this at these various rates. So we're going to be looking at these rates on a per hour basis of 750 ppm. I think that there is probably 1,500, 2,250, and 3,000 parts per million per hour. All right. So let's start talking about this test matrix here. You're going to see kind of left to right different runs or test IDs that were used, different materials, which I'm going to go into in a little bit, the contamination of those materials, the treatment of those materials, and this is a long list, so we won't go into that detail yet, the number of hours, some of that was at 6 and 12, other was at 3, 6, 9, and 12, the analysis itself, and the total coupons that were used for that fumigation, okay? There's a results discussion here, but I think I'm familiar enough with everything that I can begin taking you through some results. Okay. Now, from left to right, we're going to look at chlorine dioxide concentration, and this is measured in ppm volume. So here, and this is a per hour rate. So ppm volume was 3,000 in this first case here, at an exposure time of 1 hour. And so you had a total exposure of 3,000 parts per million. And the next two columns are important because we're talking about log rates, right? We want to see, and by the way, let me mention this. This is very important. A 4 log rate for this experiment was the hypothesis and goal of the experiment, which means that there was a reduction of 99.99%. Okay, that was the goal for this experiment. And the hypothesis was that we could reach that, or that it could be reached using chlorine dioxide. Then the question is how, right? Okay, so when we derive this information, we're looking at coupons that here are 6.75, and then the control coupon 6.75, and then the exposed coupon of less than 2.00, and then we're going to come up with these log rate changes. Okay, so we're looking for a log rate change of something that is greater than a 4. So you don't have to understand all of this information, but rather it's more important that you know, did we exceed, or was it less than a log rate of 4? And then if it is less than or a greater than a log rate of 4, it's going to continually come up as not greater than or equal to 99.99%. That's important information, right? Because we're always looking in the field, or at least going into a job of the knowledge that we can reduce we can reduce the what am I looking for? The total concentration of mold on a surface of mycotoxin or of allergen by something equal to or greater than 99.99%, or in other words, a log rate of 4. Okay, so we've got that information, and immediately we see that in all 4 of these situations here where there was an exposure for 1 hour at 3,000 parts per million in 11 cubic feet, that we reached that rate of equal to or greater than a log of 4. In the case of 750 parts per million over 6 hours for a total of 4,500 parts per million, we also reached that. And this is on latex painted wallboard. And this is Stachybotrys that we're talking about. If we look at an exposure of 750 parts per million over 12 hours, giving us 9,000 total parts per million over that period of time, again, we get a log rate of 4. And then finally, in this latex painted wallboard experiment, by the way, at 75% RH, we're looking at 3,000 parts per million at an exposure time of 3 hours, or 9,000 total parts per million. And again, we are hitting a log rate of 4. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. If you have questions as we go through this, please feel free to ask them. You know, I have poured over this time and time again, but there are even some questions that I have, but I am seeking out some answers to some of those questions right now. But I wanted to bring you this information because it is relevant, like I said, especially for condition 2 environments, or when we're looking to achieve clearance, right? After we've performed remediation, clearance, passing it is the difference sometimes between profitability and endlessly searching for clearance, right? So this is relevant, important information for everyone's pocketbook. All right, now let's get on to our next test subject here, if you will. And remember, if we're going to go back to, let me just go back. I should have this on 2 separate pages. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I can do that. I can't. I want 2 separate pages here. But I just want to remind us. Let me just get there real quick. I want to look at our test subjects. I don't know if you find yourself in this, but when your mind is going in so many different directions like this, sometimes you lose track of exact terminology. And I want to make sure that I'm not saying anything incorrectly here. Here we go. Yes, chitomium is our next test subject. I wanted to make sure I was correct about that. Okay, so we're going to look at the results with chitomium here. Okay, in this latex painted wallboard at 75% RH. We can look down this, and again, from a chlorine dioxide concentration standpoint, we go from a low of 750 parts per million to a high of about 3,000 over different exposure times. And the only times that we see a 99, a log, a 4 log kill rate of 99.99% is either at 750 parts per million at a 3-hour exposure rate, or 3,000 parts per million over 3 hours, for a total of 9,000 parts per million and we get that 4 log rate as well. So that tells us there that what is sufficient, at least for Chthonium, is a relative humidity of 75% for 3 hours at a minimum of 750 parts per million. That is per hour. So the total delivery of 2,250 parts per million. Okay. We go down one more. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want to show you some really good information. When we drop the relative humidity to 45%, what becomes interesting is that we don't get to a 4 log. The best we can do is a 2 log there. Okay. So it tells us that there's a correlation between relative humidity when we're applying chlorine dioxide and our results. Now, why is that? I can tell you why that is. We know that the stability of chlorine dioxide in water is very high. That's why when we're dropping a Deuterion tablet into water and it gives us our chlorine dioxide solution, that is shelf stable for 30 days, right? A minimum of 30 days. So it's very it is attracted to water. Chlorine dioxide is attracted to water. It's why aeration is so important when we are doing a fumigation treatment, whether it be for odor or for clearance. And we've found that the more we aerate that water, the better results that we get. So this all points back from the real world to this data where aeration is and humidity, relative humidity, is very important for results. And we can see that showing up in all of this test data. Now, we come down here. Let me just get a little further down. And this is in Chthonium still. The first time that we reach a 4 log result is when we are generating 4,000 parts per million of chlorine dioxide per hour in a volume of 11 cubic feet for a total of 3 hours, or an exposure of 12,000 total parts per million. That is a lot of chlorine dioxide. And so what that would tell us as well is that it's worth taking that relative humidity up, if we can, to 75% to reduce the amount of chlorine dioxide that's necessary for clearance, or for a condition 2 environment where we have elevated mold spore counts. So this is great information for us. It's usable information. It's going to translate into our test subject that we're going to go into in a little bit. Let's look at another one. 4,000 parts per million, 6 hours, a total of 24,000 parts per million with a log rate of 4. Where else do we begin to see that at? We're back now to 75% RH, right? And immediately you see that those limits come down. 750 initial parts per million per hour for 12-hour exposure time, or 9,000 at greater than a 4 log rate, right? Let's come down here to another species. I believe this is an Aspergillus species, if you will. That was Aspergillus right there as well. Let's look at another Aspergillus species here. Now we're looking at 750 for 3 hours, 4 log rate. 3,000 for 3 hours, 4 log rate, right? These results now are beginning to become predictable. And it seems to point to, if we want to keep costs under control, and if we want to minimize our application time, which we're getting a lot of feedback here of 3 hours, which is going to show up in our practical testing in just a second when we go through that information. But look at what these results are showing at 75% RH. Now we go down here. Let's make sure we've got this Fumigation. And what do we begin to see here? The difference is a dry surface versus a wet surface. So more information that this begins to deliver in our protocol, because look at these reductions. They're horrible, right? Once you get to a wetted surface, in other words, let's say it's a surface that's just under, where you've had a flood or something like that, right? A surface that is wet is not going to give us the results that we're looking for in terms of fumigation, right? We need to dry those surfaces out first. In other words, emergency services need to be established first and foremost to get the result that we're looking for. So that means that we're going to begin with the drying stage if we're in a water damage or an emergency situation before we begin applying fumigation to that job. And you can see that show up over and over where wetted coupons are not delivering results. But as soon as you go back to dry coupons here, again, right, now you see those results go through the roof. Okay, so I hope that this is helping everyone who's listening or watching this understand this correlation between relative humidity, minimizing how much chlorine dioxide is necessary, how much exposure time is necessary, and then the result of that with a minimum 4 log result. All right, let's get into a little bit more here. Let's look at ceiling tiles. And again, when we are in a 75% RH condition, here we're at 750 parts per million. I know what you're going to say, because we don't quite reach a 4 log count there until we get to, let's see, here we didn't actually reach it, did we? We never reached it in this ceiling tile at 70% RH. And if it were me, okay, then we should have another test. The EPA does not provide another test subject here where we might have 1,000 or more parts per million delivered over a 3-hour time. Suffice to say, if we were dealing with, I think this was Ketonium. If we were dealing with Ketonium, we would have wanted to test this once more to see when we reach that 4 log, and it wouldn't have mattered if it was at 1,500 parts per million over 3 hours for a total of 4,500. But we can get those results when we do the test subject that I'm going to suggest in just a little bit here for all of us. Okay, the Fumigation, this was an Aspergillus subject. Again, 75% RH, 750 parts per million over 3 hours. Gave us that greater than 4 log rate. And then we go back to 75% RH, but on a wetted surface, we don't get close again. Okay. I'm just going to show you that now that these results are consistent throughout, right? If we want to deal with an unpainted pine wood test subject, we're dealing with the same information there over and over again, and we're showing that we can do it in 3 hours with specific part per million counts, etc. We can do it in 3 hours on unpainted pine, again, 75%, both in the non-vegetative and vegetative state. What does that tell us? Now, when we're looking at unpainted pine, we can, if we have a condition 3 environment, we're seeing efficacy. Vegetative meaning that we are seeing the actual growth, right? We can actually accomplish that result on unpainted pine substrates. And all of this is going to go into reporting that we put together. All right. Let's see. Unpainted wood pine, 75% RH, log rate of +4. That was vegetative. Now look at this. Wood vegetative at 45% RH. Where do we see it? 3,000. Where do we see success? 3,000 parts per million over 3 hours, right? 3,000 parts per million over 6 hours. Of course, we're seeing it there as well. So it's very consistent data that we keep seeing over and over again. And what I'll do is I'll be working in the background as we get information in to put together recommendations for all of these test subjects so that you've got a protocol that you can establish on each and every surface that you come in contact with as to how you would fumigate that, whether you're in a non-vegetative or vegetative environment. We'll have RHs and all these sorts of things, just be outlined for you so you know exactly what protocols to run. And then when we get to the form, you can fill that out after we've sent that into the laboratories, and we can make sure that all of the testing that we bring back together in a North American sense is consistent. Okay, let's go down. Is there anything interesting here? Nope, just more of the same good information and plus 4 log rates as we go through this, again at 75% RH. Okay, let's get through this here, and let's get into the allergen side of things. All right, once we get down into the allergens here, we're looking at the same type of information, right? What's the per hour part per million volume? What's the exposure time? And what's the total anticipated time? And then where are we getting inactivation of the allergens? Now, this isn't the same as the reduction in fungal colonies alone. This is looking at a reduction of allergen. So we can begin to get very close to a 4 log, even though it's showing as a 2, but we can get great results here on allergen reduction. And I would suggest that, anytime that we're at 99% plus, which is the majority of us, in terms of allergen reduction, that's going to make a huge impact on your customer, especially if you've got sensitized populations that you're dealing with. So keep that in mind here when you're reading through this data that, again, is available in WorkDrive if you haven't seen it before. So look at that, at the data. Let's look at the individual test subjects themselves. And now let's look at the aflatoxin side of things, right? Where are we getting significant reductions here? Well, 750 parts per million for 12 hours at 9,000 total parts per million gives us a 96% reduction in aflatoxin. Where else? And that was on latex painted wallboard. Where else are we seeing significant reductions? Ceiling tiles, right? Look at this, over 96% reduction at 750 parts per million over 1.5 and 3 hours. Unpainted pine, where are we seeing significant reduction? Right here, 93%, 93%, 93%, plus 94%, right? So we have an idea of how to significantly reduce the mold count, first of all, the allergen count, and the aflatoxin count or the mycotoxin count by looking at each of these, and then we'll bring together a correlation for you. Okay, this is more summary of allergen. Okay. All right, so let's move on from this. Let's see, this is not real important, but let's go through some results. Okay, or some conclusions and recommendations. First, in Table 11, it's saying that Table 11 shows that a greater than 4 log reduction was achieved at 9,000 parts per million per hour for Stachybotrys, the Aspergillus, on latex painted wallboard, unpainted wood pine, carpet, and glass. Likewise, a greater than 4 log reduction was achieved at 9,000 parts per million for the prescribed hours in Catonium, another Aspergillus on unpainted wood pine and carpet, blah, 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 right? Again, you're going to have access to this. In most cases, there did not appear to be a significant difference between efficacies of the 2 approaches to achieving the, I forget what CT stands for. It's not the colonies, but of 9,000 parts per million for most organisms. The possible exception is the Alternaria, where the 3,000 part per million for 3 hours appeared to be as much as 1 log more effective. The fumigation appears to be somewhat more effective for a given organism on the non-vegetative coupons as compared to the same organism on the vegetative coupons. However, this determination may be an artifact of the higher colony-forming units on the non-vegetative coupons for some organisms. In virtually all cases where the coupons were treated at the target of 9,000 ppm per hour, no viable mold cells were detected. So the value was reported in as equal to or less than the detection limit of the method, which ranged from a log rate of 0.88 to 2.0. This value represents a maximum number of remaining viable mold cells between 8 and 100. Okay. Now I can feed back to you that in numerous occasions recently in the field, we've been seeing this in the presence of, I believe, as much as counts of 80,000. And we're seeing these reductions to below 100 in those environments, which means that each and every time we are passing clearance with flying colors. If good mold remediation practices have been followed in the field, the source of water will have been removed and the RH will be controlled. These circumstances, regrowth of residual mold spores would not be expected. In some cases, although a +4 log reduction in colony forming units was attained, there were still viable spores on the coupons, data not shown, and these spores may have the ability to germinate should the environmental conditions become or remain favorable. The germination potential of the spores was not evaluated. Okay, so what does that tell? Well, first of all, it tells us the obvious, right? If there's no moisture delivered back to these surfaces, we anticipate that mold is not going to reform. No kidding, right? However, this is a good use or a good test subject to say that passive moisture controls can be a valuable part of this of an overall protocol. So, IICRC S-520 speaks to that when we are talking about recurrence prevention. You'll hear us talking time and time again about passive moisture controls. Why are those moisture controls important? Because those passive moisture controls not only contain those EPA registered ingredients to prevent against regrowth, but they also are there to resist moisture from getting back to the surface so that moisture content can't be elevated and regrowth on the surface itself isn't possible going forward in the future. So that's why we talk about passive moisture controls being a part of recurrence prevention. Sorry, I've got my phone here because I'm always looking back and forth for any notes that I might want to also mention, and people keep texting me. Okay, let's talk about allergen reductions. The hypothesis of the experiment was that chlorine dioxide fumigation had the potential to achieve significant reductions in the allergens and mycotoxins associated with all species. The reduction as a function of CT was evaluated on 2 types of examples: coupons of all 4 materials inoculated with pure Alternaria, Allergen Alt A1, and coupons of the 3 non-vegetative materials inoculated with spores of Alternaria. The coupons were fumigated at CT values between 3,000 and 9,000 parts per million volume hour. The results indicate the following. For the pure Allergen Alt A1, the concentration was reduced by 99.2% and 100% at CT values of 4,500 or greater on pine wood, carpet, and glass coupons. Remember, glass coupons are our control, so that would be expected. For the pure Allergen Alt A1 on wallboard, the reduction was between 90.5% and 98.8% of CT values between 3,000 and 9,000 parts per million part per million volume hours. And then the allergens for Alternaria colony forming unit coupons were reduced by 98.6% and 100% on the 3 materials for CT values of 4,500 and 9,000 part per million hours. There's no significant difference between the results for treatment at 750 parts per million compared to the 3,000 part per million treatment on the Alternaria colony forming coupons. The allergen ASP F1 from the Aspergillus fumigatus latex painted wallboard coupon showed a percent inactivation of greater than 95% on unpainted pine wood, showed at a percent inactivation of plus 85.5% at a CT of 9,000 part per million volume hours. And these results suggest that the efficacy of allergen inactivation is material dependent, which we're going to draw out in our process or in our data, and in how we make recommendations for this application. The other two materials, wallboard, wallpapered latex painted wallboard and ceiling tiles, were tested on CTs of 1125 and 2250, and the ASP F1 inactivation was very low. In conclusion, allergen inactivation is dependent on the building material and the type of allergen. Mycotoxin reduction. The coupons were fumigated at CT values between 3,000 and 9,000 part per million hours. The results indicate the following. The mycotoxins was reduced by 91.5 to 96.3% for wallboard, pine, and glass for CT values of 4,500 part per million hours and above. The carpet appears to be the most difficult to fumigate, with 92.3% reduction achieved only with the treatment at 3,000 part per million for 3 hours. If similar results were obtained on mycotoxins derived from vegetative mold species, high reductions of mold of spore loadings by fumigation may provide effective remediation of mycotoxins and significantly reduce the likelihood of regeneration. So the overall conclusion is if in any mold remediation, the EPA guidelines call for repairing the integrity of the structure and or removing all other sources of water intrusion, as well as controlling the relative humidity. This research has demonstrated the potential for achieving large percentage reductions in viable spore counts on all materials, as well as significant percentage reductions of the concentration of allergens and mycotoxins. The laboratory research showed that the results of allergen and mycotoxin inactivation are very promising. The building materials and most of the contents can be fumigated in place and effectively reused after fumigation. That is the EPA putting their stamp of approval, if you will, on chlorine dioxide activation based upon these test results and saying it. Okay. So now this is in lab. So what we want to get to is something that is helpful for all of us. So here is a report that I recently put together from December 7th of 2022, when BioClean and Good Housekeeping out in San Diego, California, first delivered some images to me that were before and after images at 100x magnification based upon this EPA lab data. So all of the information caused us to question, in both condition 2 and 3 environments, can we get the reduction that we're looking for using chlorine dioxide fumigation? And in table 1 here, we make sure to define what conditions 1, 2, and 3 are. And then we talk about the materials and methods used. In this case, the dwell time used in the test described was 3 hours. And by the way, Christy, if you would put this up, this is the EnviroGuard report, just to let everybody know. Oh, you've got that. The initial relative humidity of the test chamber was 53%. After aeration for 3 hours, relative humidity levels with the test chamber reached 78%, kind of going back to our data. The concentration of deuterium chlorine dioxide used in the test was 32 parts per million per cubic foot. Table 2, figure 1, shows a clear presence of mold spores on the sheetrock, which I'll show you in a second, as previously described. Table 2 figure shows the same sheetrock substrate after the fumigation of deuterium chlorine dioxide. To reiterate, the concentration of deuterium ClO2 used in this test was 32 parts per million for a 3-hour dwell time. Here is table 2, where you can see figure 1 showing obviously a proliferation of mold spores under 100x microscope. And in figure 2, where you really do not see much, if any, spores, maybe one spore showing up here or a portion thereof, perhaps a second there, perhaps a portion thereof here. So the results, pre-test air samples revealed the following viable mold species: Basidiospore cladosporium, Aspergillus penicillium, after the 3-hour dwell time at 32 parts per million per cubic foot, applied as a fumigation treatment to the sheetrock. A reduction of 99.875% was realized, resulting the simulated reestablishment of a condition 1 environment. Maybe that should be resulting in the simulated reestablishment of a condition 1 environment. Conclusion recommendations, as illustrated first in the November 2013 EPA report entitled Laboratory Evaluations of the Efficacy of Chlorine Dioxide Fumigation for Remediation of Building Materials with Molds, Mycotoxins, or Allergens. Fumigation appears to be an effective method for returning condition 2 and 3 environments to condition 1, as noted by BioClean Good Housekeeping. Though this test was not assisted by other cleaning or containment methods, pre-cleaning surfaces, and the use of containment methods per IICRC S-520, such as air scrubbing and HEPA vacuuming, can be helpful in achieving successful clearance and the establishment of condition 1 environments. And what I've gone ahead and done is specified all job site preparation information, all fumigation procedures, and then the job site fresh air dilution, neutralization, and testing after the fact. That's all in this one report that you'll find. But here's what I'm very excited about. This is a form that, if you would like to participate, we will work together and we will come up with, obviously, your company, the assessor doing the testing, a pre-test date and a post-test date, as well as the laboratory that you're using, the laboratory location, the date that it was sent, and the date that you received it again. And we are going to do the same thing. So if you have jobs coming up where you are interested in engaging with us on this, then this is for you. And I'm going to take this one step further in just a second. So stick with me here, okay? We are going to test this in the very same way, where relative humidity levels during test will be established on various fungi. Now, that's going to come from your pre-testing what those fungi are. So when you receive this form, this will be open and you will be able to put the fungi species in. And what we're going to do is we are going to test for a period of 3 hours, 6 hours, and 12 hours for a total of 9,000 part per million count over that period of time in each of these areas. So you've got 3,000 part per million delivered at 3 hours, 1,500 delivered at 6 hours, and 750 delivered at 12 hours. And then we've made room for 6 different fungi species. If it goes beyond that, great. We'll build this out together. Okay, so that is going to be on latex painted wallboard. Then we're going to do it on ceiling tile if that is something as part of your job. If it's not, then we won't use that test subject. Then we're going to do it on unpainted wood pine, right? If you've done demo, or if it's in any other kind of environment, such as a crawl space, an attic space, etc. And then we are going to do it on carpeting as well. So we've got all these different substrates to test on. Then we've provided one for the allergen side of things, testing the same way, and another for the aflatoxin. Okay, so we are ready to begin testing with you and helping you create results, where afterwards we're going to compound this data, and then we're going to give you the sales and marketing materials to support this, so that when it comes time to speak with your customers about it, you will have real data that has been aggregated not only from your own testing, but from testing across North America. So now you're seeing the power of working together here. And where are we going to be able to come together to go over that test data together and to ensure that we all understand it and to take the next step together? It is at Market Makers 2023. So if you are if you are participating in this study, I would also encourage you to look at Market Makers. This is our best practices group that last year met for the first time here in Banner Elk, North Carolina. And we had it's where mold severity index came from to begin with, right? So we're taking everything a giant step forward this year, as you can tell from what we're about to engage in doing here. But I want to show you what this event looks like so far, because it is going to be a powerful event that is for business owners, for company owners, and for managers to come to and participate in best practices that take your company to the next level. So as you can see here, the first thing that we're going to hit on is all of the updates for Mold Severity Index, including a complete review of Mold Severity Index, the Mold Severity Index test kits, MSI and property assessments, using Mold Severity Index, educating and building trust with your customers using Mold Severity Index estimating so that you're profitable, and job quality control with Mold Severity Index. Then what are we going to do? We're going to jump into this data. In this session, we're going to review nearly 3 months of compounded Deuterion fumigation efficacy data from real jobs across North America, which will include fungal efficacy, mycotoxin efficacy, and allergen efficacy. And then we're going to have a little fun in the afternoon together. Either we are going to go golfing together. That's one package, or another is a leisure package where those folks are going to go for a tour of the high country and then enjoy some time at a local not winery this year. It's going to be at what is it? Tap room. Okay. And then we're going to get together, welcome dinner with everybody. And if you know us, right? If you know the Myers, we are going to make sure that you got some good food while you're here. All right. Day 2 is this. If you've been checking it out, we are going to be launching with everyone the Phoenix liquid applied roofing systems. We're going to go through the technology, 8 distinct roof types and opportunities, a hands-on demonstration of not only what it looks like on various surfaces, but also how it's being applied. And we're going to go into SOPs and things of that nature. The warranty system, which is a limited lifetime warranty system, pricing strategies for estimating, and the certification process and any Q&A that you have. We're also going to be talking about some new, awesome, and innovative equipment. Actually, some of it's going on in fabrication right behind us right now, where we have new equipment coming in this summer, and we've got new safety establishments, and some new reliability things with some new services that you won't have to worry about taking care. I shouldn't say it that way. We will make sure your equipment is taken care of year in and year out, and that you're always under warranty with the program. That will apply to both low viscosity and low, what is it called? I do this sometimes. I apologize. Low viscosity and low pressure equipment, and potentially high viscosity and high pressure equipment. More information to come soon. We're also going to show everyone the new safeguard encapsulants line. We are having, we're creating new lines where we've got budget-friendly encapsulants coming to the table with some new technologies that we're going to roll out, and then we're going to show you where the premium line, gosh, I should have made notes on all this. Where our passive moisture control line is going, and the new technologies over there. And then for anybody who's able to stick around on day 2, we're going to have a special dinner for everybody here again. So there is a lot going on right now. We're super excited about everything involving what we just spoke about with fungal, mycotoxin, and allergy efficacy when it comes to fumigation of Deuterion, and helping you drive more sales and better results in 2023. But we're also looking forward to all of these new products and application systems and equipment and everything. So truly, Market Makers 2023 is something to look at. If you want to check it out, you've probably gotten an email from me, but if you're looking for 2023 information, go to events, and then if you skip forward a little bit to June, right, you'll see that on the 19th, you can click right on Market Makers, and you can come right down here. And if you want to register, you can get information on what everything includes and the 3 different types of tickets, including just standard registration, or you can get the golf package or the leisure package. So I look forward to seeing everybody this year. Last year we had like 15 companies. We think that this year we'll probably go to 40 or 50 companies here at EnviroGuard HQ. So anyway, hope you're having a great day. It's an exciting time. 2023 is going to be an exciting year as an EnviroGuard customer. But stay tied into us, right? Stay attuned to these live streams and everything else that comes out on social media, on Instagram, and on Facebook especially. Check in at EnviroGuardDirect.com on a regular basis. And we will have a lot more information coming to you very soon. But we do look forward to seeing you and to engaging with you in all of this testing. And if you want to engage in this testing, I created a new URL today. Did I write that down? Let me just make sure I've got this before we go. The domain to email me at, I think I put it on social media today, so check that out. But the domain is, well, maybe I didn't give one out yet. Well, let's do this. Support at EnviroGuardDirect.com. That is support at EnviroGuardDirect.com. If you want to participate in this test over the next approximate 90 days, going to be a little bit less than that, and you've got jobs coming up that you want to track this kind of information with, and you're interested in the support and sales materials, the customer education materials that are going to go along with all of this data at the very end, then email us at support@EnviroGuardDirect.com, and we will make sure to get you the right form, and then we'll pick starting dates and jobs and things of that nature, and we'll begin tracking it all together, okay? Thank you for spending your hour with us for this Lunch and Learn, and we look forward to seeing you. Let's see. We look forward to seeing you. But by the way, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I forgot to say at the very beginning, so happy St. Patrick's Day. Have a great time tonight. Be smart, right? Get a cab or an Uber if you find yourself with a few too many. But we look forward to working with you, and as always, we appreciate your loyalty and support. Take care. Bye-bye.